guys, welcome back to my channel and welcome to today's video where I quickly just wanted to share with you how I personally cut my rat's nails. This is something I do get asked about quite a lot, either from people that are handling their rats and getting scratched because their nails are quite long, or their rats are play fighting or fighting with their other rats and they are actually scratching their rats because of this. So cutting rats' nails is not something you have to do. Some rats will naturally keep their nails down themselves. One of my rats, Moose, I've never had to cut his nails. He does chew them and keep them down himself, which is super handy. But some rats, they will have to have their nails cut if they're scratching you when you're handling them, or they're not keeping their nails down naturally with things in the cage. You may find you have to cut their nails yourself, and this can be quite a daunting and tricky task. So over the years of owning rats, this is definitely something I've struggled with. I've tried various different methods of cutting their nails. I've tried restraining them and holding them down. I've tried having other people help me and hold the rats, but I find that this is just a very stressful situation, both for me trying to cut the nails and also for the rats if they don't like being restrained. It does end up taking quite a long time to cut the nails and it can be quite a frustrating process, so I've finally found a method that works for me and I wanted to share it just in case it also works for you too. So if you do have a rat that is comfortable with being restrained, or a really chill rat that doesn't mind being restrained, and you're perfectly fine using this method, by all means carry on using that method if it works for you, but I've really struggled with that method over the years and I wanted to share this one with you because cutting rats' nails can be quite a daunting process. If you've never done it before, you might be fearful of hurting them, especially if they're wriggling around and moving. When you've got scissors or nail clippers, it can be quite scary, so hopefully this method might work for some of you too. So when it comes to actually cutting your rat's nails, you can either just use human nail scissors, those work perfectly fine, or nail clippers, or you can go out and get pet specific nail clippers. I do have a pair of these, but I was an idiot and I used these to cut something else and now they're super blunt, so these don't work anymore and I've not bothered to buy a second pair just because I do use human scissors and these seem to work fine too. So before we go ahead and cut the rat's nail, it's really important to understand the anatomy of the nail just to make sure we know exactly where to cut to prevent any injuries. So like most animals, rat's nails have a blood supply and this is called the quick. This is most visible at the top of the rat's nail and this is the more opaque section compared to the thinner, more transparent section, which is the bit you want to be trying to cut. Try not to worry too much if you do accidentally cut the quick. Rat's nails can bleed quite sufficiently and it does look a lot worse than it usually is, but if you do find yourself accidentally cutting into the quick, it's always good to have something like flour or cornstarch on hand to dab onto the end of the nail just to stop the bleeding. But if we take a look at this diagram of a rat's nail, the part you want to try to cut off is the more transparent, pointy bit on the end. Cutting this off and creating a nice rounded nail is what we want to try to aim for. So when it comes to rat nails, the ones on their back feet tend to be the larger ones that do a bit more damage when they're play fighting with other rats or when you're handling them. These are the ones I try to focus on the most and I try to cut these. If anything, I try to focus on these. The ones on their front feet don't do as much damage. You can also cut them if you want to, but I tend not to focus on these too much. So the method I've recently started to use with my rats is cutting their nails in their cage, especially if you have rats that aren't too confident with being handled or being outside of their cage. This method might work for you too. So probably the most important step in all of this is something called Malt Paste. This is honestly a lifesaver when it comes to rats. You can get them to do pretty much anything as long as Malt Paste is around. It's really good for bonding with your rats and getting them to lick it off your hand. This is a really good method of bonding with them, and it's also really handy when it comes to cutting their nails and getting them to sit still long enough. So this is what Malt Paste looks like. It's just a brown paste in a tube. I do actually sell this on my store if you'd like some. As I said before, it's honestly a lifesaver when it comes to bribing your rats to do anything you want them to do. I really recommend having some of this on hand. So I have recently moved a couple of things around in the cage. I am going to move them back just for the purpose of the video and also to cut my boy's nails because it does desperately need doing. And I did have a shelf in my cage that was kind of at eye level, and this was really good for having the rats close to your face so you can see their nails, but also somewhere where they can sit whilst you do it. So all I do with this is smear this onto something into the cage to keep them distracted. The thing that I've chosen to use to smear this on is just a wooden perch I have in the cage. This is really good because it keeps them elevated and extended up away from where I'm cutting their nails, and most of the time they don't even really notice. You do want to try to smear as much of this as possible to keep them as distracted as long as possible, just to give you a chance to cut as many nails as you can in that time before they notice. So the good thing about doing it this way is you've now got both hands free to focus on cutting their nails rather than having to hold them and restrain them. So what you want to do once they're distracted, eating the malt paste or whatever you've chosen to give them to keep them distracted, is take the foot you want to try to cut the nails on in one hand between two fingers, hold this relatively firmly and securely, and then use the other hand, whatever dominant hand you've got, to cut the nails with the nail scissors. You do want to try to do this in the best light possible, whether you're doing this in natural light or whether you're shining some sort of light onto the nails, just to make sure you can see what you're doing properly. Obviously, if your rat starts to struggle or tries to pull their foot away at any point, just let go of the foot, let them move away and let them settle down before you start to try again. Obviously, if you hold on to their foot when they're doing this, you can actually injure them, so anytime they start to struggle or try to pull away, just let go, give them a few minutes to calm down, and then try to start again. But I have found this to be the quickest method of cutting their nails. I can get a couple of feet done in one sitting, which is really good, and the rats also get a reward and a treat out of it, so they don't seem to mind too much, which is a plus. It may take a couple of practice runs and a couple of sittings to get your rats used to the presence of the nail clippers, get them used to the sound they make when they cut, and get them used to you touching their feet. It can be quite strange for them, so I do recommend working up to the point of cutting their nails. Even if you can only cut one of their nails in one sitting, that's fine. That's one less nail you have to cut the next time, but just keep practicing with them, get them used to the sensation and used to the thought of you cutting their nails, and fingers crossed it should be relatively easy from now on. Obviously this is just my way of doing it, you don't have to do this if you don't want to, but I did want to share this just in case you were struggling. Maybe in the future I will switch up the way that I do it, but right now this is what is working for me, and it might also work for you too. Do let me know down in the comments if there's a different way that you cut your rat's nails that works best for you. I'm always open to learning different methods of doing things, and I'm open to trying different methods too. Also let me know in the comments if you try this method with your rats and if you find it easier than the other methods. I know this has been a lifesaver when it comes to cutting my rat's nails. I find it so much less stressful for them, so let me know down in the comments if you try this and if you have any success. And of course don't forget to subscribe to see any more animal videos from me, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!